Okay, so I can only stream one at a time. Alright. It is June 14th, and I'm going to do my own version of Ebola news. Never mind this stuff. This is a project di- on diabetes that I'm working on. Now, for those of you who are frequent the YouTube community, you might know a channel by the name of Florida Maquis. I've watched many of his videos, especially, especially
This isn't
recently,
going to be a very long video.
and he has great coverage. Yes, I take a lot of the information off the work that he's been doing. He's been doing excellent work on Venezuela, and now he's been focusing primarily on Ebola. I also have been following Jennifer Veterans for Truth over here at YouTube. She is a nurse, registered,
Hey guys.
retired, I don't know. She's very knowledgeable. She also does a lot of work on Ebola. So I take a lot of the links that they have and I put my own twist on the information. So without any further ado, let's get into some Ebola news. Now, which reminds me I need to bring up another tab before we go on. For those of you who don't know and who didn't follow the previous Ebola outbreak, which began in somewhere, I believe it was 2013, there's an, which was as the worst recorded Ebola outbreak. We have another Ebola outbreak beginning in somewhere. We can find sources back earlier than this date right here. However, these numbers begin in August of 2018. And this is a graph for the numbers we have now. It is estimated, okay, that there have been about 2,000 confirmed cases with 1,400 deaths. And we look at the rate per month, per day. If we compare that to the graph of the previous outbreak in 2014, the numbers that we have now are projected to surpass the worst outbreak in history very soon. Um, so it's definitely important to keep an eye out for this news, and we'll get into it. So here is a map of Africa, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is where the outbreak has taken place this year. Last time, I can't remember where. I'm pretty sure it was in this area. This in here, Sierra Leone, Guinea, Liberia, Nigeria. I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyways, the outbreak that we're dealing with right now is here. They are attributing it to this region up here of northern Kivu. However, some sources are reporting that it began in Mbandaka. Okay? It's here, and it's all the way across the country in Kivu, in here, in the towns of Beni, Butembo. Okay, we have this one right here. Oicha. We have. There are more towns up here. So it's been able to cross the entire country from here to here. Who knows how far it actually is today? Who knows how it got there? Who knows if it's in here, in some rural villages that don't have news coverage that nobody is talking about? Who knows? Okay. Recently, within the last day or two, Ebola has reached Uganda. It has killed a child in Uganda, and Uganda is over here, the next country over. Okay. Now, for those of you that also don't know, there's a civil war going on in Africa. Well, everywhere in Africa, but between the South Sudan, in this area right here, South Sudan and Central African Republic, between Christian factions and Muslim factions, which is scary because it's almost impossible to keep track of who's going where. It is a smuggler's wet dream because all you have to do is pay somebody and you can go anywhere you want. Okay? And this causes a lot of worries, especially with people being shot and bodies being handled. That is how Ebola is spread. So it's very easy to see how this situation is a powder keg. Now, the reason why all of this is coming to the forefront in the news is a couple who were vacationing in Fiji who died of a mysterious illness. Many conspiracy communities were pointing at the fact that the husband, David Paul, a 35-year-old, 36-year-old, it'll say somewhere, worked for Lockheed and Martin and had secrets, so they silenced him. But we're learning that that just isn't the case. Although, if you go around reading news articles, you'll find them saying anything and everything except for Ebola. And that raises red flags for many people who have any common sense whatsoever. If you give me a second to develop a timeline. Okay, let me skip this one. Yeah. And I'm out of order already because we have suspected Ebola victims escape isolation, risking a larger outbreak. So Ebola is getting out of hand without a doubt. Yeah. Okay. So, like I said, Fiji is saying it's a mystery illness. And there was also the cases in Dominican Republic of people being poisoned with insecticides. And they threw up. There was 3 people that wound up dead at a resort in Dominican Republic. And news channels were trying to link the insecticide poisonings all the way around the world, literally halfway across the world, to the mysterious illness of the family in Fiji. Michelle Paul, who is the wife of David Paul, they both died 2 days apart. Michelle died first. David died first. Second, excuse me. Now, the timeline of this, because from what we understand, they were in Las Vegas, okay? Prior to going to Fiji. Or just Nevada. So we're going to assume that they went through LAX. This will be relevant as we get to these tabs up here. of this takes place, Michelle and David Paul died 2 days apart after arriving in Fiji on May 22nd. So I'm assuming that they arrived on May 22nd, yeah? And she began to feel numbness in her hands, and they were struck with vomiting and diarrhea, so they decided to go to the doctors. Now, these are texts or emails, probably texts, from the couple to the parents. It says, "We have been throwing up for 8 hours. Dave has diarrhea. My hands are numb. We'll text when we can." Now, they went to the hospital, and they got treatment. She says, "We just got back from the clinic. They just gave us fluids and anti-nausea drip. They gave us electrolyte packets and anti-nausea pills. They're going to rest in their room." That day, Michelle died. 2 days later, David died. Now, these articles, they don't give us all the information all at once because there's very important information. Okay. The Fiji Ministry of Health wants to blame it on the flu. Michelle Paul died on May 25th, which would have been what? If they said May 22nd is when they arrived, 3 days later. So 5 days after getting to Fiji, the husband died. 3 days after getting to Fiji, Michelle Paul died. And this is not the onset of symptoms, this is how fast they died, which is uncharacteristic of Ebola, if they were to catch Ebola in Fiji. And that's key. We're going to get to that. The symptoms: vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and numbness of the hands. Okay? They went to the clinic and they were released. They went back to the hotel. Then, when David woke up, Michelle was clammy and sweating, and he was too weak to take her to the hospital. This is the same day. When they went back to the hospital, it was too late for Michelle Paul. They couldn't get her an IV. They had just gotten her an IV that morning, and they pumped her with fluids and anti-nausea drip. Later that day, they couldn't get an IV in her. This is characteristic of Ebola. And we'll go over the symptoms. I have this tab right here. We're going to get to it. You know what? Forget it. Let's do it right now. Let's do it live. Right? Oh, the bleeding, the death, I'm looking for shortness of breath, chest pain, headaches, confusion, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, muscular pain, joint pain, feeling tired, fever, weakness. Hello. It's influenza-like, but this is a little different because we're going to see there's massive fluid loss and a collapse of the circulatory system, because what is Ebola? It's a circulatory disease. It attacks the T cells, the macrophages. From there, it enters the lymph system, the circulatory system, and then it enters the bloodstream. And it collapses the entire circulatory system. The length of time between exposure and the development of symptoms, 2 and 21 days, usually 4 and 10 days. However, recent estimates based on mathematical models predict that around 5% of cases may take greater than 21 days to develop. So the jury is out in regards to this. Chances are they didn't get it in Fiji, is what I'm telling you. They had contracted it before, possibly were or were not contagious on the plane ride. We don't know. We just don't know. The media is being extremely hush. Okay? But they couldn't get an IV in her later that day. Then the brother went back, the husband, excuse me, this is texts to the husband's sister. He went back to the hospital. But he died too. This is an account of a nurse who treated them, which is pretty much the same story. They had symptoms similar to fever, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness. They were treated and wanted to go back to the hotel. They were put on drip, which means they had an IV that morning. But at 5:30 p.m. I don't know what time they were admitted. 5:30 p.m., less than 12 hours presumably, and her circulatory system collapsed. He died 3 days later. He died 3 days after she did. The nurse then began to suffer similar symptoms. Also, 2 security guards, another nurse, and a police officer. So as we can see, maybe the security guards, as they were too weak to walk in, who grabbed them by the arm or the armpit and helped them to a seat, helped them to a room, another nurse that took them in, they were isolated. Then, the Fiji Sun has ruled out influenza. The father says, do not cremate the bodies. Even though cremation is what should. It's. Who knows? Right? Who knows? Okay? This is from the Fiji Sun. June 14th. Excuse me. June 7th. Today is June 14th. This Nadi ward, this hospital, is in isolation. I don't know the current status. Do not enter without authorization from management. This is the clinic that they went to. The U.S. State Department is involved, obviously, because Americans died, but the CDC is there. Maybe to cover their tracks, who knows? So, just to sum it up, we know that Ebola is in Fiji. We know that it is Ebola. We have the way that it spread. We see them locking down an entire clinic. And that is exactly the procedure for quarantining Ebola and Ebola patients. Now, to my knowledge, 4 of the 5 people initially quarantined have been released. But that doesn't mean that it isn't Ebola. Now here's the conspiratorial part, okay? Measles infected person travels through LAX airport on Memorial Day weekend. Okay? Somewhere between May 26th and May 28th. It's just measles, apparently. However, we have some strange happenings. For example, there was a power outage. at LAX. Let me get the date for you. Southwest Airlines alone canceled 10 flights and delayed 15 and re-screened the people. I believe this was June 1st. I can't remember. Okay, June 6th. We have these links are going to I'm going to show you, okay? Terminal 1, the entire terminal was evacuated. The LAPD, an employee has been diagnosed with typhoid. Typhoid-like, another employee showing typhoid-like symptoms. I believe the entire police office was evacuated, if I can't be recalled. Don't quote me on that. City Hall was exhumed, fumigated. Okay. Now let's look at some rashes over here. Here's dengue or dengue. Here's what it looks like. Okay. Now let's look at okay. You really can't tell the difference between those two. There's another one that I want to bring up before I bring up Ebola. Here's the typhus rash, typhoid fever. Now, in cinematography, we most commonly associate Ebola with the large, blistering boils. But this is what an Ebola rash can look like. This is what Ebola rash can look like. Ebola. So tell me how they can tell the difference just by looking at a rash. I'll tell you how. By calling it measles and not scaring the public. That's exactly how. We are dealing with an outbreak of measles potentially being Ebola. And this is how they are downplaying the situation to not get people to panic as they try and cover up their tracks with planned power outages and evacuations of terminals, cancellations of flights so that they can quarantine everything. That's how it's doing it. Look, I can't find Pauline Cafferkey. Okay, she's a Scottish nurse. She was working in 2014 in Sierra Leone, and it was either her or a colleague of her who committed a crime by falsifying the information, by falsifying fever data, the temperature that was taken. By lowering the temperature and getting the nurse who had Ebola through the screening procedures because they wanted to be with their family on Christmas. A day later, that person became ill and had to get treated for Ebola. I believe it was Pauline Kafferke. If not, she was either the one who fell ill from Ebola, who was smuggled in a sense, or she was the one who lied on the sheet about the temperature and did the smuggling. Either way, we have these people who are supposed to be the ones in charge lying about their status so that they can be with their family and spread the disease across countries, across continents, across oceans. And this is a scene from the Hot Zone. I can't play it for you. I don't know the exact copyrights of it. But this guy right here, he's in the lab. He's one of the workers. He's the character that he plays is a very arrogant PhD, know-it-all by the books kind of guy. And they were sent in a sample, and he says, it's not Ebola. Do you know the chances of it being Ebola? It's probably this, that, or the third, right? So he's taking the samples and he's testing them. He says it's what, pseudomana, pseudo bacteria. I pulled it up. Give me a second. Pseudomonas. It's one of the most common bacterias. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. He says, "Oh, your samples, the samples that you have, it's not Ebola. It's just Pseudomonas." And so one of the tests was, this. He's like, "Smell it." Yep, smell it. It'll smell like what do you say, grape juice or something. Smell it. And so he wafts it really deep. Huh, it doesn't smell like it. Huh, uh-oh. Yep, better go into containment. Anyways, I won't spoil this. This is a good series. Because, later on in one of the episodes of this Hot Zone, they go before a board. The Army, the Navy, the CDC, I don't know if the president's there, but all the top brass of every single agency are in a room, and they're sitting there deciding if they should quarantine everybody involved. Should they let everybody go? They go, if you quarantine, and one person who's in charge of the CDC says, if you quarantine people, blah, 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 everything will stop. He says, people will stop sending their kids to school, stop going to work, riots, looting. He says, the end of America as we know it will occur in 7 days. If people get wind of a potential outbreak of Ebola in Washington, D.C., this is where it took place. So, another cinematography anecdote. This is Fear the Walking Dead. This is the first episode. And the main character, Madison, she's a counselor at a school in LA. And this character right here, he goes through the metal detector. And the metal detector goes off. Madison does some quick thinking, blah, blah, blah. She grabs the knife in his pocket. She puts change in his pocket. Said, oh, blah, 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 come with me. So, there's the knife that he was carrying. He's like, who's the knife for? Is it for the people that bully you? No, blah, 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 blah. See, he's a very intelligent kid, and he ends up, like, tutoring his bully. Like, he's really smart. He's like, no, that's not what it's for. He's like, what? Tell me. I'll have to expel you if you don't. He's like, okay, well, there's outbreak. He's like, we have to stick together. There's power in numbers. And Madison's like, what? Huh? What's this guy babbling about? He's like, there. Obviously, this kid spends times on the internet. There's outbreaks in 5 cities. You know, people become violent. They start like he knows what's going on. He's watched the videos of what's happening, and then Madison's like, yeah, right. The government would tell us, blah 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 blah, and he knows what's going on, and Madison is suffering from normalcy bias, where it's like, no, 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 everything is gonna go on normal because in the past everything has gone on normal, and that's what normalcy bias is. And later on, there's a little in the second episode, they meet up again, and he's in the pantry, he's in the school pantry gathering food. He's like, shouldn't you should be stocking up, and then she's like, oh no, the government will have food, and then he says, yeah, the same people who are supposed to warn us, right? Anyways, I don't think it's going to be as bad as Fear the Walking Dead, where everything just breaks out like right away, because there's an incubation period with Ebola, whereas there was no incubation. The incubation was you get bit and like 24 hours later you're a zombie. So it's not going to be crazy like Fear the Walking Dead, but things will shut down once this outbreak, okay? And we talked a little bit about Ebola and what it was. I'm going to talk about AIDS in a second, because I'm going to get to the whole conspiracy thing about, you know, I'm going to show you why they're bringing it to. I'm going to tell you, oh, the conspiratorial aspect of this all. Give me a second. I'm going to check to see if I got any. I do have somebody watching. So, the conspiratorial aspect of this pertains to, a couple things. Like, this is planned. Okay, I'm going to tell you why this is all planned. This isn't happening by chance. It was a plan for them to bring it to America. And they're not going to stop it from spreading. They're going to control the spread like the way that a dam will release water slowly. Okay? I'm going to show this all to you. So, in the movie Hot Zone, it all starts off with it's suspected being simian hemorrhagic fever. That's what they think that Ebola was. Let me do this backwards. Simian hemorrhagic fever virus. Okay? No, I can't do it backwards. Excuse me. So HIV or AIDS, they don't know where it originates from. They only think they know that it comes from a simian immunodeficiency virus. It's so shoddy. If you look at the idea of the way that AIDS came to be, it's so. If you don't know, Ebola and AIDS, they emerged at almost the same time, and is believed to have originated from some type of. Look, if you're a conspiratorial person, you kind of know that AIDS was made in a laboratory. I mean, they have the cure for AIDS. Tell me when's the last time you ever heard of a world leader dying of AIDS. A world leader dying of AIDS. Okay? Tell me when's the last time you ever heard of a world leader taking part in a homosexual orgy. Because if you dig deep enough, please, no pun intended, you will find that almost all of these world leaders engage in homosexual activity. Not only that, but they're messing with prostitutes. And you mean to tell me that not one of them catches AIDS? Oh, they catch AIDS, but it's like strep throat to them. You just take a Z-Pack and go home. Obviously, Z-Pack doesn't cure AIDS, but it's for the world leaders. They look. The cure for AIDS is out there. That's why so many people die of AIDS. But you never hear world leaders dying of AIDS. And what does AIDS do? AIDS is right here. It the macrophages. It's a disease of the macrophages for, in short. And what is Ebola? It's a disease of the macrophages. What is it confused with? A simian hemorrhagic fever. Go look up the origins of Ebola. Is Ebola engineered? I don't know. Do they have the cure for it? You better believe it. You better believe they got the cure for it. That's why they're releasing it on us. Because they probably designed it. I don't know for sure. But I've looked into Lyme disease. They've made that. There was something Morgellons disease is a new version of what they've created with Lyme. They do these tests all the time. And do you think they'll tell us? No, they're intended for us. And so here's the conspiracy theory part. A day ago, 2 days ago, there's, far-right websites claim Congolese migrants with Ebola. Whether they have Ebola or not isn't the point. Because they're crossing over into the United States. There's video of them in San Antonio. There's another thing I need to bring up real quick as I'm talking. All right, you're going to have to look into this. Recently, there's a request for translators in this area to deal with these Congolese, okay? Well, real quick, I already showed you that it's already in the United States. It's already in LAX. It's already in LA. It's somewhere in the United States. It's here. It's here. It's already here. It's been here. Because Donald Trump lifted its travel ban on Chad. When? April 10th. Where's Chad? To the north of the conflict zone, right here. Here's where the outbreak is occurring, right across here. It's moving laterally. But then who knows if it's here? This is a conflict zone. This is war. You want to go look up some videos? Go look up some videos on this war. There's people dying every day. Bombings, people driving around in tanks, people driving around in trucks with 50 cals, just getting out, shooting people, chopping people, just like Rwanda genocide type stuff. Can't keep track of people. And here's Chad. And they were flying in, and if you fly into, you can fly from Chad to, you can go to other countries. Yeah, I think you got to stop in Europe first. I forget where, but you can fly right into LAX. I looked up the tickets. You know, the flights are there. It came from Chad, and it came to America, and it's here. And it took, it took a full month for them to get their Ebola, to find their Ebola person and send them on a plane and get them over here. But it's here, and it's spreading, okay? It's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight. They're going to keep it hush-hush until it's way out of control. And I'll tell you why they are doing it. I'll get into that in 1 second, because with these Congolese translators, one of the requirements, or it said, if you are an immunocompromised person, you cannot apply for the translator job. They don't. If you're immunocompromised, they do not want you being a translator. Something's very fishy. There's listen, shit, hospitals and clinics. Not everyone in the country, but there's many hospitals out there who are doing pre-screening before you can even go into the hospital. That is not normal. That is not normal. They know something is up. They know something is going on. Something is going around. They're getting ready for it. Now this was 2015 because in order to handle Ebola, they don't know if Ebola can go airborne. It can definitely be aerosolized if somebody sneezes and it lingers in the air. It can survive. We don't know how long, but it can survive. Now, there's only a few hospitals that have the containment centers for Ebola. As of 2015, it was Massachusetts, New York City, Johns Hopkins, Emory in Atlanta, University of Minnesota, University of Texas, Nebraska, Denver, and Providence over in Washington. America's healthcare system is going to be inundated very quickly. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why they're bringing Ebola over here. Oh no. Here we go. This recently, February 1st, Colorado Senate passes a bill favoring the popular vote over the Electoral College. The people are trying to get control of their country. I got news for you, Trump tards. Donald Trump does not have a Donald Trump does not have an approval rating that will get him elected with the popular vote. He doesn't. I don't care if you watch Fox News. It's a lie. U.S. manufacturing to a 9-year low. They don't have the graph here. It slumps to a 9-year low. All the work that Obama did. Here we go. Where's the graph? All the work that Obama spent a lot of money. He doubled the debt. He inherited a poor economy. He inherited an economic crisis that almost destroyed America as we know it. He had to double the debt. But he got manufacturing. He raised the manufacturing. And I can't find the graph that I was looking at before. It's okay. You can do your own research. But Donald Trump is lowering the manufacturing in the United States, and he's raising the budget deficit to $740 billion. His negotiation skills are throwing America down the drain. The real estate market is getting ready to crash again. And it's going to be worse than 2008. The retail apocalypse is happening. Also, we've got farmers who aren't going to be planting. America is going to be headed for a greater economic standing than in the Great Depression. It's going to be worse. And they need to hide this by releasing Ebola when they are ready. And what are they going to blame it on? They're going to blame it on migrants, and they're going to shut down the border, and they're going to keep us in here. They're going to keep us stuck in here. There's nothing anybody can do. There's nothing you or I can do to prevent these events from happening. Ebola's already here. It's already spreading. They're already going to blame it. They already have blamed it on the migrants. They're already building the wall. They're already going to seal us in America during this depression. And they're already have the plans to eliminate us one by one, two by two, however you want to count it, in a war of attrition, Soviet Union style. The reason I am bringing this information out there is because it's time to get ready. Reality is going to hit us very soon. See, the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, I'm not defending Obama. I'm just trying to shut some Trump-tards up. Because Obama and Trump are two heads of the same beast. I wouldn't call them heads because they don't have a brain. They're two orifices where waste is exited out of the same beast. The National Defense Authorization Act makes it so that any type of infrastructure is seizable by the government. Do you know that voting is deemed as a part of infrastructure? They can literally, people won't go out to vote in the popular vote if Ebola is going around. They just won't. You will get some try-hard people out there going out there in masks and gloves, but man, that's first people to be affected are going to be nurses, okay? Nurses. It's going to spread slower in America than it will in Africa. In Africa, they have traditional burial things, and people will lie about dying of Ebola so that they can be buried traditionally. It's a hands-on approach, literally. So that's how Ebola spreads. You know, there's a lot of archaic stuff. Like in Madagascar, they exhume the dead after like 20 days, and they dance with to console the soul of the. It's crazy. It's not going to, but you can't stop it in America. You just can't stop it. Now, I want to read something. In closing, you know, it's time. It's time to get your food. It's time to get your silver. It's time to get your cryptos. I'm all set. I can sit down. Listen, I have almost mastered the power of fasting. I have a reverse osmosis filter. I could drink the purest water. You know, I'm not worried about Ebola coming through my sink. I haven't mastered the art of fasting. I've mastered the practice of fasting. My record is 7 days on just pure water. That's it. I'll go off on a little tangent. The thing is, I was working. I was renovating a house far away, and I didn't bring enough water with me, and I had to drink bottled water, right? And after drinking the bottled water, I started getting acid reflux. And that's crazy because 6 days with no water, 6 days with nothing but water, and my body was doing, I was feeling good, and I drink out of a plastic bottle and I get acid reflux. The only thing that could calm that, I had to eat food after that. That's why I stopped my 7-day fast, my water fast. But I'll fast for as long as I need to. I don't need food. The human body doesn't need food. You just sit down in the corner of your house, drinking nothing but water, just have the gun pointed at the door. You got nothing to worry about. And that's why I'm telling people it's time to prepare. Time to get your food. Time to get your gold. Time to get your silver. It doesn't mean that life is going to stop, but Yeah, I mean, I'm not literally saying I'm going to sit in the corner of my house with the gun pointed at the door and fast while everybody outside is dying of Ebola. I'm saying that worst case scenario, if it comes to it, you can just fast and you'll be healthy. But get your food. It's time. If you know anybody who's a nurse, make them aware of this. They need to be extra paranoid, like a soldier in a battlefield. You can't, you can't. If you're a soldier in a battlefield, you can't be like, "Oh man, getting shot is for paranoid people." You know what I'm saying? If you're a nurse, you can't be getting Ebola is for paranoid people. We're professionals. No, you have to be scared. You have to be paranoid. You have to be aware. You have to know that you're gonna get some arrogant employees, and this arrogance is just fear. But they're not willing to admit the element of fear, and it's an arrogance. That's what it is. You have to understand that there's going to be people that are arrogant and are going to put you in danger. It's really is time. And now I'm going to look for something really quick. If you give me a second, it's a story. I believe it's called LARPing. LARP, which stands for live action role playing. That's odd. Oh, okay, give me 1 second. And it's a story about somebody who was working on Ebola. Alright, you know what? I'll find it myself. I don't want to type my password in because I'm live streaming. If you just bear with me, I'm gonna. If you just bear with me, I'm gonna find it. Cause I click here at the Reddit of No Sleep, and it takes me to the user for some reason. That's odd, very odd. Maybe if I click on the user for No Sleep, nope. And it's yeah. Okay, well let me do that. What is going on? Okay. Um. Uh, oh, it was. Yeah, I'm gonna take the time to find it just for a second. I wish I could play music or something. You know, I don't know. We have the cure for every disease or virus, and that's 100% true. 100% true. Yikes, it's gonna take. Nice name, bro. I would not trust the vaccine. If they push the vaccine, don't take it. Just go home. That's why you prep. That's why you buy gold and silver and Bitcoin. So when the world gets hit with, you just you just cash in and you don't worry about feeding yourself. Cause that's just it's it's crazy. Okay, it's a I found it yesterday. I know how to find it. Give me a second. Uno momento. And I didn't post. Man, I'm probably gonna download this, edit it, re-upload it. Here we go. Okay, you can look. This is the title of it. My life was ruined. This is posted 4 years ago because of an email I never should have received. Blah 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 blah. I'm gonna skip all this. Whoa, I'm gonna skip all this. Give me a second. He opened up a random email, right? He thought he was going through classes. Progress of EBOV 7X. The address was 2 letters off from his. Blah, 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 blah. Attached are the preliminary results from the last batch of tests in EBOV7. The X generation seems to be holding up much better to the modifications. Remember, this is eyes only, so don't print this out or anything. You're new here, and we all think your help is really what's gotten us off the ground on this. If you have anything to know, let me know ASAP. Provided this generation holds up, we'll have a much better quarterly report for the big wigs than we did last time. That would be the secret societies with the big money. Don't wear the tie with the mustard state on it. Blah blah blah. Reagan. He had no clue. Blah 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 blah. With the iteration of EBOV7X and the hiring of new personnel, we believe we finally addressed the main desires of the client. EBOV7X contains the following alterations from the base EBOV0. EBOV0 would be what they first found in 1979, I believe. Increased incubation time of 12 to 40 days as opposed to 2 to 12 days. Suppressed the lack of appetite common in EBOV, thus removing one of the major diagnosable tools. Increased durability of the virus, allowing it to remain hot for up to 8 hours outside the human body. Decreased rate of fever increased by 20%, allowing an upwards of 35% more time before a patient becomes immobilized. What this person concluded was someone was altering Ebola to make it less noticeable, to make it less easily diagnosable. Someone was making a version of Ebola that wouldn't burn itself out. A version of Ebola that could be a pandemic. Now, this is just a story. At least I think so. It's what it's designed. It's in No Sleep. It's a horror, a short story horror forum. But just think about that. If you know anything about Lyme disease, or you know anything about the engineering of HIV, then this is not far out of the realm, is it? And I'll conclude my stream with that. And but first, a side note. Yes, this is fear porn. You're absolutely right. This is what would be considered fear porn or fear mongering. Yes, I'm sounding the alarm, but I'd rather sound the alarm and be a crazy a kook than be caught sleeping. Because I'll be okay, but what about everybody else? What about everybody else that doesn't listen to me and laughs at me? You know? And that's... Gotta... Look. Nothing will save you. Only Thank you, One Mind, One Voice. I should have a garden video coming out soon, but this Ebola thing, literally, as I was talking about no sleep, I haven't been sleeping much lately. I've been watching the Ebola news for about 2 months, and I'd say I'm late to jump on the bandwagon, but after everything that I've seen and heard and read about, I think this is a reality. I think it is the perfect. I mean, look in the news recently. There was the Iranian tanker, the oil tankers that got blown up by Iranian. It's a false flag. No, Iran didn't. Iran has nothing to gain by attacking oil tankers. And they need to regain control of the world, and they're losing control because of the spread of information. So they need Ebola, they need a war, they need to mask their failed Ponzi fiat scheme. Oh, it's 100% spiritual. I mean, listen, people need guns to defend themselves from looters because let's say that today Donald Trump says Ebola's in the United States. You know that he won't say it because he doesn't care about us, right? He's not doing anything to stop the Ebola. He's doing things to bring it over here. So let's just say that Donald Trump goes on his Twitter and says, the CDC is conspiring to bring Ebola here, blah, 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 blah. Let's just say that he did that, right? The stock markets would crash. They'd have to shut down the stock exchanges. People would stop sending their kids to school. That means people would be staying home from work to watch their kids. People would go to the supermarkets and take all the food off the shelf. I guarantee you, before day 2, people would be, if you've ever seen the videos of like any of the holiday sales that they do, and people stampede into stores, that would occur within a day or two. The truck drivers would stop driving their trucks to deliver food. Everything as we know it would stop. And that's the perfect plan. Nobody would be the wiser. Everybody would point fingers at everybody else. The right will blame the immigrants, right? It's already, as soon as that story becomes mainstream, which it already has, maybe they're letting the story ferment, okay? Ferment might be a bad word for lack of oxygen. Maybe they're just fanning the flames. But they're getting ready for something big. And, just gotta be prepared. Hey, let's all hope that it burns out, right? I don't want to deal with Ebola. I'd rather deal with civil war. I got no problem shooting my neighbor. But Ebola? Come on now. How do you protect the people you love from Ebola if they don't know it's coming? You can't hide from Ebola. The animals will have it. Like, it's crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Me standing here thinking that I know enough of anything, thinking that I'm important enough to say that Ebola is going to ravage the world. And it's already begun. This is absolutely crazy. I don't even believe it myself, but I've read too much and I've seen too much, So, oh, dengue, I don't know how to pronounce that. And you're right, dengue is, but then again, I showed you something. Look, I don't think you were watching. Watch this. Ready? Let me open up a new tab. Let me show you typhus. I'm going to end on this. Let me show you a typhus rash. Because typhus is going around too. Look, red bumps. You see that? Let me show you a measles rash. Because measles is going around, is it not? Measles rash. Okay. Let me show you dengue rash. Dengue rash. All three of them look the same. Now, most people associate large boils with Ebola. And yes, that does happen, right? But look. That's an Ebola rash. Well, that was taken from Pinterest, but this is what Ebola rash can look like. It doesn't always look like these boils. It can be less. And so, yeah, I mean, look, ready? Oh. 1 in 4 people near Congo's Ebola outbreak. That's not the link. It's 1 in 4 go undiagnosed. So, also we have Ebola ravaged Congo now hit with 87,000 suspected cases of measles. I don't think it'll get deleted because I only have 125 viewers. So I think once you begin monetizing, they start really hitting all that stuff. But yeah, look, I showed you those 4 rashes. Basically what they're doing is they're going to say, oh, it's not Ebola, it's typhus. Oh, it's not Ebola, it's measles. Oh, it's not Ebola, it's dengue. They're doing it in the Congo. So the numbers that we have, they're not as bad as... All right, let me do one last thing. Let's look at the graphs, right? Like the cases per month. I want to. That's what I want to look at, just to see. Okay, this is from Wikimedia.com. Look, 250 cases in. Oh wow. March 31st. We're looking at 100, 150. 200, 225, like 1,000 cases in 1 month, and that was bad. I think we can just estimate about 1,000 cases. This is Forbes. Oh wow. This had 4,000 deaths in 1 month. Oh no. These are total numbers. It went from 1,500 deaths in the span of 1,000 deaths in the span of a month. I mean, we're getting there. Look at this jump. It went from August going about July it was at about 500 deaths. This is even better. At June it was less than 250 deaths per month. That's where we're at now, and it's June. Look at this. This is just what I want to say is, like, hold on tight and get ready and keep an eye out. And if you know anybody who's a medical practitioner, show them this video or show them Florida Maquis or Jennifer Veterans for Truth. It's going to be important. Anyways, that's underground news. I'm out.